This is Logical Logistics, where we cover shipping, supply chain, logistics, and everything in between. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the newest episode of Logical Logistics. Today's guest is Sam Hamilton, and he is the owner of Momentum Courier, owner and president, correct, Sam?
That is correct, yes.
And why don't you give a little background on yourself? Because what I know about you, it's really interesting. I think the listeners should learn about your business in the area that you cover. So why don't you give yourself, a little background about your company and how you got into the business?
Okay, I appreciate that. I graduated from Eastern Kentucky University in 1989 with 2 degrees, computer electronics and a bachelor in computer science. The first company that I worked for straight out of college, it was in my hometown. I live in a very small rural area. Was a company called Hyster Company that manufactured forklifts. I was hired to implement a new computer system there. Did that for 3 years. Moved on to another company for about a year that manufactured gas meters in the United States. Worked on a new computer system there. After doing that, I was tapped by a company that a lot of people know in the wire and cable industry, a company called General Cable Corporation. They were moving and merging 3 different divisions of their company to a new headquarters in northern Kentucky in the Cincinnati area. So I relocated north of where I'm at now because I'm actually back in my hometown now after several years. Spent 3 years there merging those 3 divisions of that company together. Became the director of the manufacturing systems there, running 18 manufacturing plants and 5 distribution centers running the computer software for those. Once I did that for about 3 years, I was asked by a company in Chicago, Illinois, to implement software. It was a software company, a company called SSA. Traveled all around the United States implementing EDI software. Stayed with them through 1999. They kind of took a downturn because of the year 2000 issue. Their sales dropped. I went to a new company called I2 Technologies, a company in Dallas, Texas, selling CRM software. We were one of the pioneers in the electronic commerce over the web, doing things that Amazon does now and things we take for granted. Did that for a year, was responsible for half of the United States, South America, Canada, and then half of the vertical markets that we went into, which was included automotive, oil fields and services, power industry, customers like Siemens, customers like Caterpillar, John Deere, Case New Holland, heavy equipment manufacturers, and people like that.
Wow.
Did that for a year, and then that's where I got into the logistics arena.
All right.
I did well there in the startup program because CRM was a brand new product for us. In the first year, we sold about $90 million worth of software, and out of that $90 million, I was responsible for about 65 or 70 of that.
What year was this?
That was in year 2000.
Okay.
So then in 2001, they put me in charge of their service parts planning solution, which they sold to the service industry and replacement parts. The logistics basically of planning where to keep that 1 or 2 parts to service people most efficiently. So the customers now that I'm driving for are the customers that I was selling software for, people like Dell and people like UPS and Siemens Power Generation, people like that who needed a turbine, but they were so expensive that they could only keep one in a certain area, and they needed to know exactly where in the United States to position those so that they could best utilize the materials that they had and save in costs. So I did that for a year.
All right. So at this point in time, where were you located?
I was actually located in the Cincinnati, Ohio area.
Okay.
But I was commuting to Dallas, Texas every week, working with them. And during that period of time, I was what we called a SWAT team member. I would go into a customer, explain our products in details for the sales guys. I was a pre-sales salesman, so I was the guy that demonstrated the products. The salesman would go in and start the deal. I would come in and show them how the product worked, how we could solve those problems. So, my background, because of that, is I have experience in a wide array of industries because I've been in, all of these companies, and I'm a hands-on guy, so I like to tour the plant. I'm not just in there to sell you something. I want to know how your business works. I want to know how to solve your problem. I want to be a partner with you. And that's what we built this business on.
Okay.
So I went to another company for a couple of years. That didn't work out. The stock market and stuff was starting to drop, and I decided that I wanted to control my own destiny, so I wanted to start my own company.
Right.
So in the summer of 2004, the birth of Momentum LLC, which is now Momentum Courier, happened in the Cincinnati, Ohio area. I still lived there at the time. I did that. The first two customers that I had, one of them was subcontracted for a company to service banks and move paper in the banking industry. The second one, which is still my number one customer today, and I got these customers on the same day, by the way,
Oh, great.
was a pharmaceutical company, and we service long-term care pharmacies.
Yeah.
Or the long-term nursing homes through that long-term care pharmacy, I should say. They are my largest customer. We do probably 60% of our business to those types of businesses now, not just that one company, but about 60% of what we do is stat deliveries, medical equipment deliveries, home deliveries. We do a lot of where we intercept FedEx and UPS shipments for home IV systems that may need to be refrigerated that they could not deliver. We go get those, refrigerate those, and then redeliver those because those medicines are quite expensive and those folks are usually very sick because they're antibiotics. We protect those valuable products for them and then get those to the customer. So that's a huge part of what we do. I did that in the Cincinnati area up until 2008. Actually, in 2006, my father passed away. 2007, my grandfather passed away. And if you know me, I grew up in a very small town.
Okay.
So I moved back to my small town because of that. Married my high school enemy, which is a story within itself that I'd be glad to share with somebody one of these days. But we've become great friends.
All right.
And we got married, and so I moved back to my hometown in 2008.
And where's that?
That is in Mount Vernon, Kentucky. It's just south of Lexington.
Okay.
Matter of fact, it was 8 years ago next week.
All right.
And I moved back here. The economy had kind of tanked at the time. People weren't, moving products as much on the same day environment as they were in the past. We were competing against the next day services, FedEx, UPS, people like that.
Right.
So I decided the best time to grow a business is when business is down. So I opened up the Mount Vernon location, which services southern Kentucky. I opened up the Lexington branch, which is just north of us. It services the central Kentucky area. And I also opened up the Crossville, Tennessee location. And when I call these locations, I have drivers there. We don't have physical buildings there or anything like that. We're a small operation, but we position drivers there. And the main reason that we opened the Crossville, Tennessee location was because of a company called Colinx.
Okay.
Colinx is a conglomerate of bearing and belt manufacturers. All of the competitors came together and said, if we distribute our products out of the same location, it saves us all money because they may need a Gates belt to go along with a Cooper bearing or Timken bearing or something like that. So Gates moved from northern Kentucky down there. We've been servicing Gates in the Florence, Kentucky area, Cincinnati area. They moved down there. Several of these guys moved down there, Baldor, those guys. So it made sense for us to put people there. We do, from the Crossville, Tennessee area, we've driven as far as Texas, Nebraska, Florida, Michigan. Anytime people companies like Motion Industries, companies like Command Industrial, Applied Industrial, folks like that. A lot of times will get parts out of here.
Okay.
So we're strategically positioned there. That's actually about 75 miles from Knoxville. We now have folks in Knoxville as well. It's about 100 miles from Nashville. We've got some folks around the Nashville area now as well.
Wow.
Because we've expanded out. We actually have, but we can, if we need to, out of Crossville, because we're also only about 75 miles from Chattanooga from there. So, I mean, if we get in a position, I've actually sent people from there to each of those airports in those areas to service them, because we're kind of right in the middle of that Tri-City area, if you will.
Right.
So that's a strategic spot for us. Because in an hour and 15 minutes, I can be in any of those cities.
So you moved from Cincinnati to Mount Vernon, Kentucky, correct?
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that was a good move. Am I correct there?
It was a good move for several reasons.
Right.
First of all, the first reason is it forced me to expand my business, which is something that I needed to do anyway. And it put me in an environment, because like I said, I'm a hands-on guy, so my strength is also my weakness, because when I lived in Cincinnati, I drove too. And instead of working on expanding the business, a lot of times I'd be in my vehicle. So moving down to a small town where there's not a lot to do, I have a lot more time to work on the strategic side of the business versus the hands-on part. Now, I still drive. We've got a few customers right here locally. And, matter of fact, we have a nursing home 3 miles from my home. My mother-in-law was in there until she passed away. So that's the other thing about business that you'll learn about me. Business is personal, especially these pharmaceutical stuff. I treat these patients like they're my family.
Yeah.
If we had 20 inches of snow last week, I was out every day in it. My philosophy is I'm going to do my best to get that medication to that patient. I treat them like they're my grandmother. If I could look my grandmother in the eye and say, it's too bad for me to get out, then I'm going to stay home. If I couldn't look her in the eye and tell her that, I get in my vehicle and go. I try to instill those same values into my drivers. We make every effort we can to make sure every shipment's there on time, and that we communicate to our customers and say, and try to be honest and say, you need it there in 30 minutes. I can't do that, but I can get it there in 45 minutes or an hour. And that gives you the ability as a business owner to make the best decision for your business. And there's, and if you say, Sam, I'm sorry this time, I need to get somebody quicker, that's fine. I'm your partner. You'll come back to me the next time. I'm not going to tell you it's going to be 30 minutes and then show up 2 hours later.
Yeah.
And you think that should go without being said, but one of the biggest customers that I had, they are still one of my customers. Their business has taken a downturn, so they're not one of my bigger customers now. It took me a year to get them to understand that when I told them that, that's what it was. They every time I would tell them I can't get there in 30 minutes, I'll be there in 45, they'd say, well, let me call you back if I need you. They'd call their old person that I took their place of, and they'd tell them, yeah, we'll be there in 30 minutes, and they'd show up 2 hours later. And then they would be upset. And I'm like, if you want me to lie to you, just tell me that. But that's not my personality. I don't do that.
Exactly.
I'm going to tell you the truth. You need to start banking on that. And it took me a long time, believe it or not, to get that customer to understand, to trust me. Because I know this industry, has been, a lot of folks, and I'm not saying people do it on purpose, but there's a lot of folks in this industry, in my opinion, who go out here, they get a truck, they start driving, they say, oh, if I had 2 trucks, I could make twice as much money. They understand how to get from point A to point B, but they don't understand what I call logistics, which is, why is that shipment being there? Why is it important that it's there on time? What's the cost on the other side if it's not there? Give you a great example. Many years ago when I first started, we had a call to pick up a motor in Cincinnati, take it to Chicago, Illinois, to Ford Motor Company. We get up there, and the security guard told my driver, said, do you see those signs that say 10 mile an hour? He said, yes, ma'am. She said, ignore them. Go. They need you. They were down 10 hours. It was costing them $400,000 an hour to be down.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what we understand. We understand time is money.
Yes.
And that's what a lot of companies don't get because they've never been on the side of the business I've been on. They've never been in those plants. They've never, they don't understand that. And it's not their fault. They've just not been exposed to it. And I think that's a competitive advantage that Momentum Courier has over our competitors is because we realize that.
Yeah.
And we try our very best to solve those problems. Now, there's times when you just can't fix a problem. You don't have the tools or whatever, and then we just tell you that. I get calls. Our niche market is cargo vans or smaller. I get calls all the time for people. Well, do you have a box truck? Well, no, I don't. But now I've had customers that we were their only solution. I've actually rented a box truck for them because they were a good customer and go pick up their shipment. Now, did I make money on it? No, but I covered my cost enough to take care of my customer because my customers come first.
Yes.
And I partner with them.
Yeah.
To me, when I walk into a nursing home, for example, and I deliver that medication, I represent that pharmacy. And there's many times when maybe the pharmacy's made a mistake, they didn't get it out on time, that those customers, those nurses, because they're upset because maybe they've got a patient that's sick or either dying, and those patients will, those nurses will be mad and they'll yell at us. Well, it wasn't our fault, but you know what? You say, yes, ma'am, I'm sorry, ma'am.
Well, they're under a lot of stress.
We'll give that feedback. They are.
Yeah.
And so you understand, you represent that pharmacy. You can't say, well, they didn't call me until 10 minutes ago. I mean, you don't throw your customer under the bus. I mean, you don't do that, You just tell them, hey, we'll work on it. I'm sorry. And you go on. Because when you walk out of that nursing home, that's the end of it. You've made her feel good. You've helped your customer's relationship. And you keep your business. If you go in there with an attitude and say, well, I didn't do it, yeah, she may say that's right. But if she calls her customer and they lose their contract, guess what? You don't have a job. And,
yes.
and so that's our attitude.
So
I think that's important.
It sounds like you cover the entire state of Kentucky and then some.
We do. The only area in Kentucky, and we've actually looked to expand in this area because my biggest customer that I spoke about earlier is actually now running some stuff out of the Huntington, West Virginia area, Ashland, Kentucky, Virginia. We don't really have anybody up in that area right now, so just that far northeastern tip.
Okay.
But that's our next place to expand. So the way I've grown my business in the past, because I've tried not to grow it too fast, is I find a customer that says, I need you in Huntington, West Virginia, or I need you in Ashland, Kentucky. We put 2 or 3 folks there, and then we grow the business that way.
Okay, so
any place in that area. Okay.
All right. So first of all, how do you find a customer that? I mean, how do you get this information from a customer? I need someone in Northeast Kentucky, and secondly, how do you find the right people?
Well, 2 things. The first part of your question is a lot of times it's an existing customer looking to expand.
Okay.
Or it's having conversations like this with people that I know are needing solutions, cold calling. And so I've been in sales for 10, 12 years. So I'm not opposed to picking up the phone and calling somebody and saying, hey, what's your needs? And I do a lot of that as well. And just ask people, what are you doing today? What do you need? Where are your, where do you pick up from? When you call me a courier, where do you need them to be located? I mean, I do a lot of that kind of stuff. But a lot of times it is existing customers just wanting us to expand out. Once we establish that new location with them, then we go prospecting and hunting business from other customers to augment that first customer.
Yeah.
And we do that. So, and then how do we find the right people? Drivers, a lot of what we do is small markets. We're in some very small cities. We're in, which when I say small, don't have a major airport. Like we're in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. We're in Bowling Green, Kentucky, Paducah, Kentucky. There's no big airports there.
Right.
So it's a challenge because many times, getting enough business in those small towns to keep a good driver is hard. But we use a lot of semi-retired people that have a flexible schedule. We don't run shifts. We let our drivers be on call. Our philosophy is they're independent contractors. We want them to work and make as much money as they feel like they need to make in a safe environment. But we do that to allow them to work and feed their families, because the worst thing you can do is get 4 people to do 2 people's job and then all 4 of them quit.
Right.
So we work with those drivers and we let them tell us what they can do, what they can't. We've also built up a nice enough network in the state of Kentucky, especially, that, for example, Elizabethtown and Bowling Green are 80 miles apart. If my Bowling Green area gets swamped, I'll pull an Elizabethtown driver down to Bowling Green and let them help out for a while. Do I make money on the jobs they do? No, but I break even enough that, again, I service my customer. My driver makes money so that they continue to work for me. And, everything's good that way. Being a small company like I am, I don't have to make a huge amount of money. I have low overhead. So, that's one thing I make sure I put plenty of money back in my drivers' pockets. I think I'm one of the higher paying courier companies in Kentucky.
All right.
Because I want good drivers. I want quality drivers. I'm not one of these companies that, pays their drivers low and then tries to pocket all this money. Again, I live in a very small town. My cost of living's not high. I think that helps because it allows me to have the flexibility, again, to service the customer well, keep the drivers happy, make sure I've got good quality drivers, and that's kind of the way we run our business.
Now, to backtrack, so am I
Okay.
correct? It was 2007 when you decided to expand?
It was the fall of 2007, spring of 2008.
All right, so most people I know would have recoiled in that situation. What made you decide to be contrarian and expand in a situation?
Well,
Go ahead.
That's actually a good question. Because a couple things. First of all, necessity forced me to go find more business because the economy had dropped. I lost, in about the time I was moving back down here to Mount Vernon, I lost probably 60 to 70% of my business in 2 months because of the economy.
Right.
Nothing we did. We've never lost a customer because of quality and customer service. Never. Matter of fact, I had one customer, we did 5 shipments a day from Cincinnati, Ohio, or not a day, a week, once a day, back to Berea, Kentucky, which is 10 miles from where I live, one of my highest paying customers. They completely stopped. So, I lost, 5 shipments a week, from them just shut down because they didn't need anymore. They couldn't afford it. So necessity was the number one thing. But number two, growing up in a small town, my family's been a big influence on me, and I remember the years of my grandfather talking about living through the Depression in the 30s and telling me stories about people who, when I was a kid, I thought was rich because they owned a big farm or they owned businesses, and I'd say, how did they get that? And he said, well, when nobody else had money in the 30s and the Depression, they had a little money and they invested because nobody else could.
Yeah.
And so it was that really fueled me to say, the economy's down. A lot of these competitors of mine are going to go out of business. Right now is a time for me to expand. And even if I get a few jobs and get one driver in those towns, once the economy turns around, I'm already there.
Right.
I'm ahead of the game.
Yeah.
And that was really what fueled it. And people, they hear those stories of nostalgia and stuff like that, and they kind of blow it off and think, but it's those values that I was taught, frankly, as a child, that taught me how to do this kind of stuff. And,
no, but so many success stories are like that. They have that hunger, that drive that keeps them going, and instead of recoiling and giving up, they're hungry and they keep on doing what you did. So going back to what you did you go to existing customers? Did you hire the drivers first and say, hey, let's go? I mean, what was your approach at that point when you lost? I mean, 60 to 70% of your business. Holy cow! I mean, I've heard
Yeah,
50%, but wow. So what was your
yeah.
approach there?
Well, we did a little bit of both. Luckily for us, my existing customer, the one that I've spoke several times about, that's still my largest customer, they needed folks in Lexington.
Okay.
Uh, so Lexington was a natural expansion for us. So that was that was easy. They also had another branch. That particular branch of their pharmacy is located in Louisville, Kentucky, and so we had worked with them, and we had a good relationship with them because they actually had a pharmacy branch in Florence, Kentucky, and we did all their work there, but they closed it down, and I knew when they closed it down, they consolidated, into Louisville, but they'd closed their Lexington branch at the same time. So I knew they needed people in Lexington, to handle the stuff for that Louisville thing, to do the stats. So I talked to them, and in the meantime, talking to them, they told me, well, we've got a branch over in Glasgow, Kentucky that you might want to talk to because they service some stuff in the area you're moving to. So that's the nursing home, among others, that's 3 miles from my house.
Yeah.
So they kind of word of mouth on that one. At the same time, the Crossville, Tennessee one, I knew that Gates moved to Crossville and was starting to do stuff out there. And I did work for a logistics company out of Chicago at the time. And our business with them had died, and I just called them up and said, and I knew it was the part of the economy. I said, hey, why are you guys not calling us anymore? And they said, well, to be honest with you, we don't have much business in Cincinnati anymore. But man, if you had somebody in Crossville, Tennessee, we could use you because those companies have all moved down there, and we can't find anybody down there. So again, this kind of opportunity in those two locations. But then, in a couple others, Paducah, Kentucky. My dispatcher actually lives in Paducah, Kentucky, so we work remotely. We're on both ends of the state. But I kind of hooked up with him, found him through doing some searching, and he said, "Hey, man, I'd really like to do something out here. Do you have an opportunity for me?" And so I had a driver and I had no customers, so then I went out in that case and looked for customers. And again, it happened to be the customer that the pharmaceutical customer said, "Hey, we've got some homes out there, so if you've got a driver, we'll." So it's been a little of both, and that's the way we've grown our business every time. Is we find a customer, we find a driver. When the driver gets overloaded, we get another driver, and then we go get another customer in that area. It's got to be methodical.
Yeah.
I've learned through business that you can go out here and get a lot of business real fast. But then if you can't service that business, not only do you lose the new business, but many times you lose your old business because you're trying to focus on the new stuff and you forget the old customers.
Right.
That's not a good way to do business. So it's been a step-by-step methodical approach to us when we did the initial expansion in 2008, 2007, 2008, and we've actually just went through a second round of that this year in 2015 because of one of the same things. One of our pharmacy customer, two things, actually, we've got two pretty big pharmacy customers. The existing one, they actually increased their business by getting a huge contract, doubled their business back in the summer. So that helped us expand out into Bowling Green and Elizabeth.
Visit www.beslogistics.net for more logistics, transportation, and warehousing resources.
But then we've also
Thanks for watching.
Started working with another pharmaceutical company that has built an online network to where they can let these long-term pharmacies actually enter their orders on their computer system on kind of the same kind of system I was selling years ago, and then it comes straight to us, and it's a low bid situation. So I bid, these routes or whatever, and if there's jobs in our area, we get them, and that's actually grown. I was one of their very first partners, and it was a cold call situation. I called them because I knew they were in the same kind of business. They actually own a pharmacy too, but they were developing this software, and I called the pharmacy and said, "Hey, I want to, if you ever need a stat delivery company in this area, call us." He said, "Well, an interesting thing, we're developing this software where a lot of pharmacies can use it, Would you be interested? And I said, well, yeah. And it took them about 6 months to get it off the ground. We were one of the first partners they had, and we started working with them, and that's been about 4 years ago. So we've actually, now we're doing quite a bit of business with them. So, you got to get out there and beat the bushes as well.
Sure.
You got to get out there and do the cold calling. Can't be afraid to pick up that phone and ask for people's business.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we do a lot of that as well.
That's fantastic, and it's so fascinating to hear. My first few guests, I've had such a wide array. I've talked to an international organization, a national organization, a company here in Chicago, but now to hear someone that covers an area like Kentucky, it's just absolutely fascinating what you've done and what is involved in the business. How do you feel about the industry in general? Where do you see it going?
I think right now, and I'll go back when the economy crashed the first time, most people didn't realize it crashed in the tech sector. That's why I got out of the tech sector 5 years before it crashed everywhere else, and most people didn't feel that like I did. I basically had to start over, and I told people then it would take 10 years at least for the economy to turn around. That's before we had the second crash. So right now, I think there's a lot of opportunity out there because I think we're in a position now to where I believe things will start turning around if for no other reason out of necessity. We've seen a little bit of uptick in business in the last year or two where people have failed to maintain their machines like they used to, for example, and now machines are breaking down and they're having to spend that time, and most of the time that puts them in an emergency situation. So we've seen some of that, but I think the opportunity for growth is tremendous, especially for our type of market, the small niche market, especially with fuel prices being down right now.
Yeah, I was just about to ask that.
That has been tremendous. One thing that I do, I don't charge fuel surcharges, never have, never will. My philosophy is I can't, I'm a small company. I can't keep track of that anyway, and it's never accurate. We raise our prices when we need to, because one of the things that I want to be able to do is I want my customers, I give them a rate sheet, X dollars per mile or whatever it is, and they know before they call me how much it's going to cost them, because many times they're quoting a rate for a customer, and that customer's down and needs it quickly. And if that customer says, how much is this going to cost me, I want them to tell them. I don't want them to have to say, let me call Sam. Sam gets a quote, gives it back to my customer, who gives it back to their customer. That's time and money. They know, if it's 100 miles and it costs them X dollars today, it's going to cost them that same tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day. And that way they can count on me. Again, consistency is the name of my business. And I think if you do that and you build a good customer base and you build a loyal customer base, I think the growth right now is tremendous, especially in the state of Kentucky and in this area, because we're seeing a lot of industry. We're seeing a lot of growth, and especially for us in the pharmaceutical business and
Sure.
stuff like that. And I don't want to pigeonhole myself, so people that are listening to this, I don't want people to think I only do pharmaceuticals. That's not the case. Pharmaceuticals is just something that's very time sensitive, so we get a lot of that shipments. That's mostly what we do is time sensitive stuff, because we understand that need for speed, if you will. So we do a lot of food manufacturing plants, process manufacturing, if you're familiar, people that are familiar with process manufacturing. To give you a great analogy, when I was selling computer software with I2 Technologies, I went into Interbake Foods in New Jersey. At the time, I think they made all the Girl Scout cookies. I don't know that they still do that,
Right.
but at the time they did.
Yeah.
There was a plant there that was a mile long. And we were in there, I was selling software, electric goes out, also the fire alarms go off. And we have to go outside, they're opening this old building, all the windows, it didn't have air conditioning, and smoke just rolling out of it. And I asked the guy, I said, what in the world's going on? He said, have you ever seen a mile of cookies burn? He said, that oven quit turning. those cookies literally will catch on fire inside that oven.
Yeah.
He said it will take us a week. We have to clean that oven by hand, that conveyor. It'll take us a week to get started back. That's the things that the process industry, that's why they need shipments in a hurry. We understand that. So when they're broke down and they say, we've got to have it in 2 hours or 4 hours or we're going to be in a world of trouble and it's going to cost us a lot more money, we understand if that conveyor stops, that's going to cost them more than if we can get it there and they can be down 5 minutes and get it back going and stuff like that. So it's that type of stuff that our business, I think, brings that a lot of courier companies and logistics companies don't understand. I've been there. I've seen it. You know, I've seen those disasters like the cookies burning up and buildings being on fire. And, you know, we laugh about it now, and I do too, but that was a serious thing. That cost them a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, so I think there's a lot of opportunity for people that want to understand the business. I think at the same time, because you asked me about opportunity, I think you're going to start seeing companies, and you already have, companies that were just 2 or 3 drivers or even 10, 15 drivers, whatever, that don't understand logistics, if you will, and what that means. They're going out of business.
Yeah.
Because they don't understand what all's involved. And we've seen in our area, and I'll give you a good example, companies that are big name companies are going out of business because they've gotten into price wars, desperate for business, and have bid themselves so low on jobs that they can't compete anymore. They can't keep drivers.
Right.
I pick up drivers all the time now from companies like that say, you know, I really like this job, but I work for this other guy, and I just couldn't make any money at it.
And I think that's the key. You're offering value, not a price. And
exactly.
That's the key. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I had a guy that worked for me for a while, him and his dad in Cincinnati. He decided that he wanted a cargo van, and we didn't at the time have a lot. This was early on. We didn't have a lot of work for cargo work. He said, "Man, do you mind if I go to work for this other company?" And you know, I'm a businessman. I take pride in somebody bettering themselves. If I can be a part of that, to me, that's as much as making money. I mean, you know, I want to say, hey, I helped that guy get somewhere. I enjoy that. So I said, go ahead. And I said, if you ever need a job, come back. It's here. You've done a good job for me. His dad kept working for me. He called me up about a year later. He said, man, I'm working 12 hours a day. I'm delivering office supplies, and they give me $1 a package for a drop. So if he dropped 3 items at a place, he got $3.
Yeah.
3 miles down the road, he dropped same thing, doing that stuff. He's doing that 12 hours a day. Time he took his fuel out, his vehicle cost, he was making about $60 to $70 a day.
Yeah.
For 12 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I said, come back to work for me. I'll give you, we had 2 or 3 nursing homes that were about 60 or 70 miles away, 100 miles away from Cincinnati that we service, and usually we get a call once or twice a day for those. I said, I'll give you those 2 jobs, and you'll make more in 4 hours, and you'll have the other 8 hours do what you want to, or do more work for me, and you'll still make more money, and you'll save on your vehicle.
Yeah.
And he did.
Yeah.
Because, again, we understand the values. You said we understand the business, and we understand what it takes, you know, to make money, but at the same time, do it in a cost-effective way for the customer. And I think that's the most important part. You know, you have to provide a solution to the customer that's acceptable. And you know, to me, you have to be a true partner. You know, there's many times that I've taken a chewing over the phone from my customer's customer on my customer's behalf, if you will, to try to help that relationship.
Sure.
And I don't mind doing that. You know, so, but that's kind of our philosophy. That's the way we've run this business for 11 years now. Well, more than that, 12 years now. It'll be 12 years in June, I guess.
Yeah.
And it seems to be working. And you know, I enjoy it. There's days when it's stressful. You know, I've had customers ask me. I had one guy ask me one day, is actually a pharmacist that called me. He said, I call you at 8 in the morning, you answer the phone. I call you at 6 in the evening, you answer the phone. I call you at 4 in the morning, you answer the phone. Do you ever sleep? So look, in this business, if nobody else does the job, I'll do it. I don't ask my drivers to do anything I won't do. But yes, I do sleep, but at the same time, I'm willing to get out there when I have to and sacrifice. I never ask anybody to do something I won't do. I lead by example.
Yeah.
And to me, that's why I think that my driver base respects what I do. They know they're treated fairly. And I think that's important. We one thing that I stress to my drivers, every driver that I talk to when I hire them, we do things the simple way around here. You get all kinds of drivers. You get, retired folks, you get young folks, you get people that, are in a financial bind. For some reason, when people are in a financial bind, they think driving is the best way to get themselves out of it. And we try to help them. And I do that. I mean, I try to help my drivers. If they're in a bad situation, I've been through it. When I started this company, I didn't. That's the other thing that I'm proud of about this company. I've built this company into what it is today, and I never borrowed a dime.
Interesting.
This business was built on cash, and I didn't have cash. I mean, I'm saying I built it by necessity.
Yeah.
Through just, if you will, organic growth. It wasn't where I, went out and took a big loan and hired a bunch of people and took a chance. I mean, I didn't do that. I didn't have the means to do that at the time because of the economic downturn and that kind of stuff. And so I think that helps me relate to some of these drivers when they're in the same position. I've been there,
Yeah.
And I think that goes back to what I learned again from my father and my grandfather as a kid. I mean, we grew up on a farm, and there was times when cash was tight and there's times when it wasn't, and we learned to manage our business based on what we had. And I try to teach these drivers the same thing. So
yeah, that's great. Really, just a fascinating story. So I always wind up my interviews, my shows with this question. So Sam, and I know that this interview you gave your answer, but I'd like you to give a little synopsis. What does the term logistics mean to you?
Okay. The term logistics, I think it has a wide variety of meanings, and it means a lot of things to a lot of people, especially in today's world of buzzwords. And to be quite frank, I hate buzzwords and cliches and stuff like that. And just like I hate technology, even though I love technology when it helps me, but I'm not one of these. My wife is and I know I'm off on a tangent here, but she's one of these tech geeks. The newest thing, she's got to get it. I'm not that way. I'm a computer programmer, and quite honestly, I just soon never have a computer except when it helps me do my business. So, and I'm the same way about this. Everybody wants, if logistics is the new big word, everybody wants to plaster it all over everything so that people will pay attention to them.
Right, and that's
what we've seen that. I mean, that's what we see now. And I think every company out there is a logistics company.
Before the interview, I we had a brief chat, and I told you see the term on the side of a ship on the ocean, and I've seen it on a small storage facility. It's so overused, and that's why I like to ask my guests that question. I want them to define it because it's so encompassing and being used in so many different areas.
That's correct. And to me, there's two pieces to my answer to logistics. First of all, logistics in my business is being able to provide a cost-effective solution in a manner that will move product from point A to point B for a customer and provide a total solution. So not just moving that product, but being able to encompass the order taking and from end to end, the full gamut of it to make it a good experience. But it involves moving product ultimately. That, to me, that's logistics, is you're moving things from one place to another, and it's not just the movement, but it's the entire understanding why you're moving it, understanding how you're moving it, understanding the ramifications of not moving it. That entire part is logistics. The part it's not is, like you said, a storage bin sitting there and stuff not moving. That's not logistics. I mean, you know, that to me, that's not part of it. But people put that. I mean, you see it all over. The other part of logistics, though, to me, that I think is the most important part, and I've learned this over the years. You know, my grandfather told me when I went off to college not to go to college and come back an educated idiot. That's what he told me. And my grandfather is a very plain-spoken man. He was in World War II, received the Purple Heart. I mean, so he didn't mince words at all, but he told me that. And to me, the basic part of logistics, the word logistics comes from the word logic. Do logical things, common sense things in making your business decisions on how to move product from A to B. And that's what we do at Momentum Courier. We use logic. We don't try to be the most high-tech thing. We use the common sense, simple approach to solve problems for our customers, because we want our customers' lives to be simple. We want their customers' lives to be simple, our drivers. So I think if I had a definition for logistics, I have to start with the word logic, or logical to start with. And I hope that makes sense to people.
It makes a lot of sense to me, because the name of the show is Logical Logistics. So you hit the nail on the head as far as I'm concerned.
Well, and exactly. I mean, that's the way we run our business. You know, when I say I'm a small company, I mean I'm a small company. I don't have 15 people even in the office to support our drivers. You know, I got a dispatcher, I got myself. I use a couple of contractors sometimes to help me out on stuff when I have projects. But, you know, we're running about 20 to 25 drivers in about 10 different locations across Kentucky, Indiana, Missouri, Illinois, Ohio, Tennessee. And we got a very small staff, but we do it because we use the small common sense approach. We don't try to be a lot of things to a lot of people. You know, we know our market, we know our solution, we know what we do to people, and we do it well. And I think that's where we've been successful.
Well, Sam, I'd like to thank you for joining us. This has just been a great interview. Once again, this is Sam Hamilton, owner and president of Momentum Courier. Sam, what's the best way for people to reach you?
The best way for them to reach me is either you can call my dispatcher at 859-694-3700, or you can email me at sam.momentum@yahoo.com.
Okay.
Either one of those will get us. If you get my dispatcher, which you probably will if you dial the number, just tell him that you need to speak to Sam. And he will get me, and I'll be glad to talk to you. You know, I want to thank you for this time. I've enjoyed this. Quite honestly, I don't get to do these kind of things much anymore. This was stuff I enjoyed about selling computer software. So
yeah. So I want to repeat that. It's sam.momentum@yahoo.com, correct?
That is correct.
All right.
And I'm also on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So, you know, they can get me there as well.
Well, great. Well, I'd like to thank you for joining us on Logical Logistics.
Click the subscribe button for new videos every week, and download us and review us on iTunes. Visit www.beslogistics.net for more logistics, transportation, and warehousing resources. Thanks for watching.